What if the moment we call death isn't the end at all, but rather the beginning of a journey more mysterious, vivid, and revealing than anything we've ever experienced in life? Picture this. Everything you've ever known, your body, your breath, your heartbeat, suddenly goes silent. Time doesn't stop, but it becomes irrelevant. Family members cry, doctors take notes, machines are turned off, and yet, something remains. An awareness, a presence. You. Death, it turns out, is not the vanishing point we once imagined. It's the threshold, and crossing it is not abrupt like flipping a switch. It's a transition, delicate and profound. As the final breath leaves the body, what was once tightly knit begins to unravel. The soul, the essence of who we are, slowly loosens its grip on the flesh. Not with violence or fear, but with a strange calmness, as though peeling away a garment that no longer fits. Many spiritual traditions and near-death experiences point to this precise moment as one of subtle yet powerful change. People brought back from clinical death often describe sensations that defy the logic of biology. A sudden weightlessness, a profound silence filled not with emptiness, but presence. Some speak of hovering above their bodies, watching the scene below with curiosity rather than fear. Others report hearing conversations in the room they couldn't possibly have heard if the brain were truly off. They feel awake, more so than in life, unburdened by pain, vision expanded, time unhooked from the clock. These are not hallucinations, but shared patterns across cultures, ages, and belief systems. The detachment of the soul is not mechanical. It's energetic, emotional, deeply personal. Years of memory, love, trauma, and identity cling to it like threads, and as they begin to loosen, a quiet realization dawns. Something new is beginning. The ancient image of the silver cord helps illustrate this shift. Described in esoteric teachings as the tether between body and spirit, it's said to stretch thinner and thinner in these moments until softly it snaps. That break, invisible to the physical eye, is the true moment of death. But even then, the soul doesn't rush off into some distant sky. It lingers, it observes. It tries to make sense of the disconnection. Especially in sudden or traumatic deaths, the spirit might feel confused, lost, or even angry. Some call out to loved ones, not understanding why no one turns to respond. It's as if the rules have changed, but no one explained the game. A mother might reach for her child. A husband might try to comfort his grieving wife, but their hands pass through air. In that instant, the world continues, but the soul has stepped behind the veil. The beginning of this journey is not just about departure, it's about awakening. And awakening isn't always peaceful. Imagine being fully conscious, yet no longer part of the scene. That's the strange paradox many souls face immediately after death. They feel alive, but different. A strange clarity takes hold, and yet with it comes disorientation. They recognize everything around them, the room, the people, the voices, but can no longer participate. This creates a surreal kind of tension. Many don't even realize they've died. Their last memories are so vivid, the transition so smooth, that it takes time to understand they've crossed over. This is especially true when death comes swiftly. Accidents, heart attacks, or sudden illness can leave the soul stunned, like waking from a vivid dream into another, more lucid one. In this early stage, the soul often tries to return to old habits. It may head home, walk familiar streets, attempt to resume routines, but nothing responds. Doors won't open, phones won't ring, conversations pass through as though the soul isn't there. And yet, it is, just not in the way it used to be. This can lead to moments of anguish, a lingering refusal to let go. And the more the soul resists, the more it feels stuck, trapped between two worlds. These early hours, days even, are filled with a kind of emotional static. Not everyone notices it, but sometimes, in a quiet room, a pet will stare into an empty corner, or a breeze will sweep through a sealed window. Sensitive people might feel a sudden chill, or dream of the departed with uncanny vividness. These are not coincidences, they're echoes. Spiritual teachings suggest that the soul in this stage is magnetically drawn to what it knows: places, people, emotions. That's why some remain near their loved ones, trying to understand, trying to help, or simply not ready to say goodbye. This isn't haunting in the cinematic sense, it's longing. It's the natural confusion of a being who's just stepped out of the only identity it's ever known. For those who lived deeply attached to material life status, possessions, control, this stage can be particularly difficult. Letting go feels like defeat. But for others, especially those who cultivated awareness, kindness, or spiritual practice, the transition is gentler. They feel the presence of guides, beings of light, ancestors, souls who once walked their path. There's a sense of being received, not judged, a warm hand, not a cold verdict. The soul is not thrown into chaos, but guided, softly, into the next phase. But before it can rise, it must first face the raw truth. The life it knew is over. What comes next depends on what it's willing to accept. Imagine waking up in a place that looks almost like your world but isn't. The colors seem slightly off, not darker, not brighter, just unfamiliar. The walls of your home are there, but they don't feel solid. You walk through the rooms, see your loved ones talking, grieving, moving through their day, but they don't see you. You try to speak, but no sound comes. You try to touch them, and your hand passes through. That's the unsettling reality many souls face in the first hours or days after death. Consciousness does not vanish. In fact, it sharpens. But in that sharpness comes confusion. The soul still carries the echoes of physical life, its routines, its emotions, its sense of self. It recognizes itself as the same person who just moments ago was eating breakfast or driving to work or lying in a hospital bed. There's no immediate awareness of having crossed over. Instead, it feels like waking from one dream into another. Only this dream is so vivid, so charged with emotion, that it feels more real than anything experienced while alive. This disorientation varies from soul to soul. Some transition with ease, gently stepping into this in-between space like slipping into warm water. Others resist, especially if death was sudden or unwanted. Their consciousness clings to the physical realm, haunted not by ghosts, but by their own need to understand what has happened. They may try to interact with the world, calling out to children, returning to the workplace, attempting to finish tasks that now no longer matter, but every attempt is met with silence. The more they try, the more painful the separation becomes. It's not just the loss of the body, it's the loss of influence, of interaction, of control. The soul quickly realizes that it can observe, but not participate. It sees pain in the eyes of loved ones, but can do nothing to comfort them. This creates a strange kind of heartbreak, love without contact, presence without acknowledgement. In some cases, especially where emotions ran high at the moment of death, anger, fear, regret, the soul might become tethered to certain places or people, not out of punishment, but due to vibrational resonance. If a spirit died clinging to unresolved arguments or unfinished business, it often finds itself magnetized to those energies. It may revisit the scene of its death repeatedly, trying to understand, trying to change the outcome, until the futility of that effort finally sinks in. This phase is not meant to punish, but to reveal. The soul is given a chance to reflect on the life just ended, not through distant memory, but through immersive awareness. It begins to understand that something fundamental has shifted. It is no longer part of the material stream of time. It has stepped outside, watching as the living continue to move forward without it. At this stage, spiritual tradition becomes especially relevant. Many ancient teachings speak of a veil, thin yet powerful, that separates the physical and spiritual realms. In the early phase after death, that veil is still translucent. The soul can see through it, reach toward it, feel what's on the other side, but the living cannot. This is why some people experience strange phenomena in the days after someone passes: sudden chill, objects inexplicably moving, dreams so vivid they linger all day. These are not random. They are the ripple effects of a soul that is still near, still adjusting, still trying to understand. For souls more spiritually attuned, this stage is a moment of surrender. They feel drawn toward light, toward voices not heard with ears, but with inner knowing. Guides may appear not with trumpets and thunder, but quietly, gently offering calm, direction, peace. And yet, for many souls, the need to stay close remains strong. That's where the concept of the 7-day window becomes essential. In many spiritual traditions, from Spiritism to Tibetan Buddhism, it is believed that the soul remains very near the physical world for approximately 7 days after death. During this time, the soul often visits familiar places, the home, the funeral, the people it loved most. It may follow the car to the cemetery. It might hover above the gathering of mourners, feeling their grief as if it were its own. It may be drawn to the photographs on the table, the scent of incense, the murmur of prayers. It watches. It listens. It feels, but it cannot be seen. This window is both a blessing and a burden. A blessing because it allows the soul to say a kind of goodbye. A burden because that goodbye is one-sided. What the soul feels in these days is deeply influenced by the emotions of those still living. Loud cries of despair, denial, and resistance can cling to the spirit like heavy ropes. They create a field of emotional density that the soul must wade through before it can rise. On the other hand, calm acceptance, sincere prayers, and shared stories of love act like wings. They lift the spirit, give it clarity, and help it understand the legacy it left behind. That's why many cultures honor the 7th day with ritual smases, ceremonies, offerings, or simple family gatherings. These aren't just for the living, they're energetic signposts for the soul, signaling that it's time to move forward. Interestingly, some souls do not immediately leave, even after the 7 days. If they were heavily attached to a person or place, they might linger longer. They may fear being forgotten or worry that their loved ones can't manage without them. This attachment is born from love, but it becomes a chain. In many cases, it is in dreams that the soul begins to truly understand its condition. It visits a loved one in sleep, appears as they once were healthy, happy, at peace, and delivers a message, "I'm okay, let go." These dreams are not fabrications of the subconscious. They are meetings between realms, made possible by the loosening of the physical mind during sleep. As the 7-day period ends, a shift occurs. The soul begins to feel pulled not forcibly, but magnetically toward another space. A passage opens, sometimes described as a tunnel, a light, or a gateway. The soul begins to detach not just from the body, but from the emotional gravity of Earth. If it is ready, if it has accepted what has happened, it will feel a kind of gentle lifting. The silver threads of attachment begin to dissolve. A new space awaits. Not a place in the way we understand it, but a new vibrational state, quieter, subtler, and infinitely more expansive. Yet this transition doesn't look the same for every soul. Some glide through with ease. Others resist until the pain of clinging becomes greater than the fear of moving on. But always, there is help. Spiritual companions, mentors, even loved ones who passed before some visible, others simply felt extend a hand. The soul is never truly alone. It only needs to see beyond the veil of its own expectations. The first 7 days are not a countdown. They are a sacred corridor, a liminal space between Earth and elsewhere. And when the soul is ready, the real journey one of understanding, healing, and evolution can finally begin. After the initial passage through the first 7 days of time, when the soul hovers near the physical world, still absorbing the magnitude of its own departure, a deeper process begins. The disconnection from the material plane is no longer just emotional, it becomes structural, vibrational. The soul starts to feel its center of gravity shifting away from Earth, like being pulled gently by a current it cannot see but deeply senses. It is now entering what many traditions call the 40-day passage, a sacred interval of purification, realignment, and preparation. This isn't merely a countdown, it's a symbolic and energetic unfolding, mirrored in countless spiritual systems across the world. The number 40 echoes in ancient scriptures and rituals for a reason. It represents transformation, gestation, crossing from one state of being to another. During these 40 days, the soul is neither fully anchored to Earth nor completely immersed in higher realms. It exists in a liminal zone, somewhere between memory and awakening. And it is here that one of the most intimate and profound stages of the afterlife begins, the life review. But this isn't a replay of events like a movie on a screen, it's far more immersive. The soul doesn't simply watch what it did, it feels what it caused. Every moment of kindness, every careless word, every silent thought it returns. But it doesn't return as a punishment or judgment. There is no external judge, no panel of deities weighing sins and virtues. What happens instead is far more powerful. The soul experiences the ripple effects of its own actions from the inside out. If it once caused someone pain, it now feels that pain not abstractly, but as if it were its own. If it inspired someone, comforted them, lifted them during a dark moment, it now feels the light it generated, magnified in its purity. This phase of the journey isn't about guilt or pride, it's about clarity. The soul begins to see the entire interconnectedness of life, how one small act could send waves of healing or harm across lifetimes. It remembers forgotten words, unintended consequences, overlooked kindnesses. Every thread is revealed, and in this revelation, the soul starts to understand not just what it did, but who it became. In this stage, the soul is often accompanied by spiritual mentors, beings of wisdom and compassion who act as gentle guides through the review. They do not scold or praise. They help the soul observe, reflect, and most importantly, learn. They offer perspective why certain trials occurred, how certain decisions shaped character, where love was blocked, and where it flowed freely. These guides, often felt as presences rather than seen as forms, radiate a kind of unconditional understanding. In their presence, the soul does not fear shame. It feels held, as if by a vast intelligence that sees everything not as right or wrong, but as steps on a long journey of growth. This life review is not always easy. For some souls, it brings immense sorrow, recognition of how many chances were missed, how many wounds were inflicted, often unintentionally. But within this sorrow is the seed of healing. The soul, for the first time, sees itself fully, stripped of ego, stripped of justification. And paradoxically, that total exposure leads not to despair, but liberation. Because once something is seen, it can be understood. Once it is understood, it can be released. The soul begins to let go of the illusions it carried in life, the masks, the fears, the defenses. What remains is essence. And yet, the process doesn't stop there. In these 40 days, the soul also detaches from worldly anchors, not just from places or people, but from roles, identities, and desires. The things that once defined it, a job title, a house, a dream left incomplete, start to feel distant, like stories told long ago. That doesn't mean the soul forgets. It means it starts to remember something deeper, what it is without all the layers it wore on earth. It begins to understand love not as possession or longing, but as presence. The people it was closest to are still felt, not through touch or voice, but through a resonance, a soul-to-soul recognition that cannot be broken by time or space. However, this detachment is not always smooth. If the people left behind cling too tightly, constantly projecting sorrow, despair, or guilt toward the departed, the soul can feel that pull. It senses the emotional waves sent through memory and thought. And even though it may want to move on, that pull can delay its ascent. Not because the soul is being punished, but because love, when expressed through attachment rather than freedom, creates invisible threads. A mother who whispers every night, "I can't live without you." A friend who makes promises never to let go. A partner who relives the loss endlessly, not to remember, but to remain in pain. These energies reach the soul. They do not go unnoticed. On the other hand, when those left behind celebrate the life of the departed with gratitude, when they pray with openness, when they speak the soul's name not with desperation but with calm, reverence, those vibrations become wings. They help the soul rise. That's why, during these 40 days, spiritual encounters often happen in dreams. The soul appears not to haunt, but to comfort, not to ask, but to offer. These dreams are not dreams in the ordinary sense. They're meetings. The kind where you wake up and can still smell their perfume, still feel their hand in yours, still remember the words they whispered as clearly as if they were written on your skin. Often, these visits carry a silent message: I'm okay. You can let go now. As the 40-day period approaches its end, a kind of inner threshold appears. The soul, lighter now, clearer, more aware, senses that the phase of reflection is closing. A gate opens, not external but energetic, and through it lies the next stage. But before crossing, something final must happen. A release, a farewell. The soul says goodbye now to love, not to memory but to the earthbound identity it once wore. It steps forward no longer as a name on a tombstone, but as a spark of consciousness, ready for what comes next. And that journey will continue into places of healing, learning, rest, or preparation. But everything that comes after is shaped by what was understood during these 40 sacred days. The soul does not carry baggage into the next realm. It carries essence, and the lighter that essence becomes, the higher it can soar. There comes a moment, often unnoticed by the living, when the soul, now lighter and more conscious after the 40-day passage, finds itself at a kind of crossroads. The emotional threads that once bound it tightly to the physical plane have loosened, the inner burdens have softened, and something inside begins to steer a longing not for return, but for continuation. A subtle shift occurs. It's as if the soul, having finally exhaled the breath it held for an entire lifetime, now inhales the awareness of its new existence. But where does it go? What lies beyond this stage? Is there a singular destination, a place labeled heaven or the afterlife? Not exactly. What awaits is not a fixed location but a vibrational domain, one that mirrors the soul's inner frequency. It is not about judgment, but resonance. The soul, in this stage, does not walk through a gate guarded by keepers. Instead, it is gently drawn, pulled by the magnetic force of its own vibration toward a space that matches its essence. These spaces, often described in spiritual literature and mediumistic accounts, are sometimes referred to as colonies, cities of light, or simply spiritual planes. They are real, not in the material sense, but in the realm of consciousness. Some souls find themselves in serene environments, gardens that glow with color, buildings that seem to breathe, spaces filled with music that feels like memory. Others arrive in more muted areas, places of rest or reflection, not unpleasant but quieter, more introspective. These are not rewards or punishments, they are states of alignment. A soul filled with bitterness or fear might initially find itself in a denser, foggy environment, not because it is condemned, but because it must first shed the remnants of that pain before moving on. In certain accounts, especially within spiritist teachings like those found in the works of Chico Xavier, detailed descriptions are offered of these spiritual cities, vibrant communities where souls live, study, heal, and serve. These colonies are not imaginary. They function with structure, intention, and purpose. Souls are welcomed, often received by mentors or family members who passed before them. There are places of rest for those still weary, healing centers for those who carry trauma from physical life, and schools not filled with desks and chalkboards, but with shared experiences, vibrational learning, and the deep remembrance of universal truths. Here, the soul begins to rediscover not only what it is, but what it has always been. Many find themselves working not in the way we understand labor, but in service. They help other newly arrived souls, assist in spiritual healing, or even prepare to guide and inspire incarnated beings back on Earth. But not every soul arrives in such luminous realms. Some, burdened by heavy emotions, resentment, guilt, fear, may initially find themselves in less hospitable zones. These areas, sometimes described as grey, dense, or shadowed, are not places of torment created by an external force. They are projections of the soul's own unresolved state. Here, time feels slower. Isolation can be intense, yet even in these lower planes, the soul is never abandoned. There are beings who work in these areas, guides, rescuers, luminous presences who gently help these souls rise, offering clarity and direction when they are ready to receive it. The path upward is always available, but the soul must want to walk it. In some cases, souls pass first through transition zones, vibrational waiting rooms, so to speak, where they undergo assessment, observation, and gentle treatment. These are not tests. They are opportunities to align, to stabilize. The soul is recalibrated, its energy adjusted, its path clarified. And in these spaces, reunions often happen. A grandmother long departed, a friend lost in youth, a mentor from a forgotten life. These meetings are not imagined, they are real, felt as deeply as any earthly embrace. The soul remembers love that had no words. It recognizes souls it may not have known in this life, but who have walked beside it through many. These reunions are healing, deeply so. They confirm to the soul that love never truly ends, it only changes form. There are also moments, in this phase, when the soul is given a glimpse not of a distant future, but of possibilities. It may be shown paths it could take next. Some are called to continue evolving in these subtle planes, to study, serve, expand. Others begin to feel a new pull, not backward, but downward toward another experience in the physical world. But before any such decision is made, there is time. No soul is rushed, and for many, the next chapter is one of healing even deeper than before. Because after arriving at its new vibrational home, whether a city of light or a quiet retreat, the soul begins its true inner work. The process of spiritual healing. Physical death does not erase emotional wounds. The traumas of childhood, the regrets of adulthood, the deep sorrows, disappointments, fears, they don't vanish at the moment of passing. They come along, embedded not in the body, but in the subtle layers of consciousness. And so, the soul must heal, not from physical injury, but from energetic imbalance. This healing is gentle, profound, and often unlike anything imagined during life. The soul may enter what appears to be a sanctuary, a space, so calm and luminous it feels outside of time. Here, it may rest, truly rest, for the first time in ages. Some describe this rest as a sleep, deep and undisturbed. Others as a meditative stillness, where nothing is expected and everything is allowed. This is not inactivity, it's restoration. A decompression after the intensity of a lifetime. The soul's energy field, often distorted or depleted, is slowly replenished. Gentle waves of subtle vibration pass through, realigning what was fractured. Emotional patterns are gently loosened. Unspoken griefs are held and dissolved. The soul begins to breathe, not through lungs, but through light. In other cases, healing is more active. The soul might undergo sessions with mentors, spiritual counselors, who help process pain, not by analyzing it, but by illuminating its root. These guides don't offer judgment, they offer clarity. They help the soul understand the roles it played, the lessons it chose, and the reasons behind the suffering it endured. The goal is not to relive the pain, but to transcend it. And for this, the soul must remember not just what happened, but who it truly is beneath the layers of personality. It is through this remembering that the deepest healing occurs. Some souls begin to participate in collective healing work. They join circles of other spirits, exchanging stories, sharing experiences, learning from each other. This is not a classroom, it's a communion. In this exchange, the soul starts to recognize the vast tapestry of existence, how every individual life touches and is touched by countless others. This realization expands compassion, dissolves judgment, and opens the heart in a way that life on earth rarely allows. As healing progresses, the soul begins to feel a new clarity, not just about the life it left behind, but about its purpose in the larger cycle. It becomes more than a traveler, it becomes a guide. It understands that the universe is not a test, but a school. That pain is not a punishment, but a message. That death is not the end, but an unfolding. And with this understanding comes peace. A peace so total, so embracing, that the soul, if it chooses, may remain in this higher realm indefinitely. Not out of fear of return, but because there is still so much to do, so much to explore, to serve, to become. And yet, others will feel the subtle stirrings of another call, the whisper of a new life, a new path, another descent into matter. But that is a decision for another time, another chapter. For now, the soul rests in the clarity of its essence, more aware, more healed, and more free than ever before. After the soul has passed through healing, learning, and deep inner remembrance, a subtle but profound awareness begins to awaken. A question starts to form not from curiosity or doubt, but from an inner impulse, an intuitive knowing. Can I return? Should I return? And more than that, what comes next if I don't? You see, the journey of the soul doesn't end with rest or even healing. It is, by its very nature, a dynamic current, always seeking expansion, understanding, expression. There comes a point after months, or even years in Earth time, when the soul begins to feel the rhythm of the next phase pulsing from within. It is no longer about leaving the past behind, but about stepping forward with clarity. The idea of returning to Earth, of incarnating again, is not met with fear or resistance in this state, because it is no longer seen as a punishment or a test, but as an opportunity, a sacred contract. But this return, when it happens, is not random. Reincarnation is not a roll of cosmic dice. It is a meticulously orchestrated process, guided not by external forces of fate, but by the soul's own growth, its needs, its unresolved lessons, its spiritual goals. And this is where the soul meets its guides, once more not as distant entities, but as co-creators in the journey ahead. Together, they begin to design what comes next. Not everything is planned in detail. There is room for free will, always, but certain key elements are carefully placed. The family the soul will be born into, the body it will inhabit, the geographic and cultural setting, the major emotional themes and pivotal crossroads it will face. These are not rewards or punishments. They are aligned with the energy the soul has cultivated, the debts it carries, the gifts it is ready to bring forth, the wounds it seeks to finally heal. And yet, not every soul chooses to return. Some remain in the spiritual planes for extended periods, working in service, helping other souls, assisting with healing, or becoming spiritual guides themselves. They may become protectors for those still incarnated, whispering through intuition, inspiring creativity, or shielding someone from unseen harm. Others dive deeper into learning, studying the fabric of the universe, exploring higher dimensions that go beyond anything language can explain. Some prepare for entirely different forms of existence, not as humans but as consciousness in new forms and new realities. The options are as limitless as the soul itself. But whether the soul chooses to return to Earth or remain in the subtle planes, there's one truth that remains constant. It can visit, often, and it does. Spiritual visits are far more common than most people believe. They don't always come with glowing apparitions or sudden chills. Sometimes, they happen in quiet moments, an unexpected memory flooding the mind, a scent in the air with no clear source, a song playing at just the right time, a dream so vivid you wake up with tears, laughter, or a message that feels etched into your bones. These moments are real. They are the touch points where one world brushes gently against another. One of the most profound ways souls reach out is through dreams, but these are not mere symbolic dreams from the subconscious. They are encounters taking place in a shared astral space where the barriers of the physical mind dissolve during sleep. Here, the living and the departed can meet again. They speak, they embrace, they resolve unfinished words or share silent understanding. Often, these dreams are remembered with stunning clarity. Colors are brighter, words echo longer, the feeling lingers for days. This is because they are not imagined. They are visits, woven into the fabric of night by love. And then there are more subtle signs, a feather on the path, a flickering light at a moment of grief, a warm presence felt in an empty room. Some people experience these signs regularly, especially those who are emotionally or spiritually open. Others may only feel them once, powerfully, at a time of great need. But the soul who visits does not come to haunt or hover. It comes to reassure, to support, to remind the living that love does not end at the veil. It changes form, it refines itself, and it continues. In rare cases, and usually only under specific conditions, souls may manifest visually or audibly, appearing as silhouettes, voices, or light. These occurrences often happen to individuals with heightened sensitivity, children, intuitives, or those in a state of deep grief or openness. These manifestations are never meant to cause fear. In fact, they are often surrounded by a powerful sense of peace. The soul appears not to prove its existence, but to offer presence. A quiet presence that says, "I am still here, just not in the way you remember." Sometimes, these visitations go beyond comfort. They become interventions, a sudden urge to take a different route home, a feeling of danger before a decision, a mysterious voice calling your name when no one is around. Many people describe moments when something or someone intervened in a way that changed everything. Near accidents avoided, moments of inspiration that sparked life-altering choices. These are not coincidences. They are evidence that the bonds of love, especially deep soul connections, do not fade after death. They evolve. But for these visits to be received, the living must also play their part. An open heart, an accepting mind, a willingness to feel without clinging. These are the bridges between worlds. When someone holds on too tightly, obsessed with the pain of loss or demanding signs constantly, it can create resistance. The soul may wish to visit, but the emotional turbulence makes connection difficult. That's why peace, trust, and gratitude are so essential. They create an energetic space where visits can happen freely, without distortion. Think of it like tuning a radio. You need to be on the right frequency to hear the message. And over time, something beautiful occurs. The grief softens, the longing becomes remembrance, the pain transforms into gratitude. The soul continues its path, and the living continue theirs, but always with a thread between them of light, not sorrow. And when the first anniversary of death arrives, it is not just a date on a calendar. It marks the closing of a sacred cycle. One full Earth year since the soul departed, and in that time, immense change has occurred both in this world and the next. Many spiritual traditions honor the 1-year mark as a kind of spiritual harvest, a moment when the soul has completed its initial phases of transition and moved fully into its new existence. It is also a time when those who remain can begin to fully release, not from love, but from grief. That anniversary, often accompanied by unexpected feelings, a deep calm, a sudden clarity, or even a symbolic event, becomes an echo of the soul's message, "I am at peace, live your life well." Because ultimately, this journey of the soul, of the living, of the bond between themes, not about separation, it is about transformation. Death is not the end of connection. It is the rebirth of love, in its purest, freest form. A love that still speaks, still walks beside us, still guides from beyond the veil. Not gone, just different, and always still here.